Welcome to another episode of Cyrus's podcast. Today I have my good friend Rene Rodriguez. Thank you so much for being here, brother.
It's a pleasure being here, man. I mean, who could not want to be here with this view?
It's nice, right? Right
Yeah,
on the water, Newport Beach.
yeah.
Thank you so much for being here, man. I appreciate it.
It's an honor, man. I remember when we first met, I was like, this is a cool dude.
Likewise,
Yeah,
likewise. I always talk about like energies and like how you're, which I think that's how we actually like bonded there is
yeah,
because started talking about energy. But I always talk about like how just good vibes, good energy, and I just felt good energy, and then we started talking about that.
yeah.
Uh,
Sometimes it's that simple, isn't it?
it really is.
Yeah.
I think most of the time we just complicate life in general, right? Like most of the time we're complicating, we're making it more difficult than it actually is.
There's so much truth in that statement.
So what I really like, well, I was telling Frank actually, my videographer about this. I'm like, this is one of the most the interviews that I'm most excited about that I've had recently because I speak at every single conference, right? And I'm there all the time, and I see all kinds of different speakers, and I am not genuinely impressed the way I was when you were on stage and what you were talking about.
Thank you.
And it's you're the way that I think, and after I've really like studied and looked into what you're doing, like the way your mind works and what you've accomplished is truly amazing. And I like to dive into that because this podcast is really about like success and what makes successful people tick.
Yeah.
And you're clearly successful in what you do. I think we talked about you had at the time you had over 300 speaking engagements this year.
239.
239, yeah,
Mm.
200 over 200 speaking engagements this year, which is amazing. And a whole nother thing I could talk about is like how do you deal with that overwhelm of like traveling all the time and things like that. But like I want to know really like where was Rene 20
Mm.
years ago?
Mm.
You know what I mean? I want to know where Rene was like. What was like before all of this? What did you do?
Tell me where you want to start.
I want to start all the way at the beginning.
Like where I was born, kind of beginning.
Yeah.
I was born in Miami, Florida,
Okay.
and lived there till actually, I was born in Miami, but then we lived in Homestead. Then we lived on 9th Street, which is right by Little Havana. So I moved to Minnesota when I was about 7 years old. Never knew my father,
Yeah.
and it was only supposed to be for 2 years, and but it was just one of those things that ended up staying. But I lived half-time Miami, half-time Minnesota till I was about 15, 16.
Your mom remarried, moved to Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
You were 7 years old. You all moved to Minnesota, obviously,
Yeah,
and then, well, now you're still there, right?
yeah. But I was half-time Miami, half-time Minnesota till I was
Okay.
about 15, 16 years old.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so I did the backwards. I was in winters in Minnesota, summers in Miami.
So what were you? That's funny. So what were you? You said who were you staying with in Miami?
My family. So
Okay.
I was raised by this. I was my grandmother was there. I had all my cousins. There was a family that actually raised me, and so I'd go stay with them, and just I mean, it's just that was home. So
Oh wow.
yeah,
And then okay, so then fast forward, you were 15, 16 years old. Did you just hunker down, and stay in Minnesota, or like how did
yeah. I
that
mean,
work?
you get older, you get friends, and I was playing basketball, and that's where your family's now. I'd still go back in the summer all the time, but
Yeah.
I wasn't like staying there for 2 and 3 months.
And then so then after so you're there. Then after high school, obviously you just became like this amazing speaker internationally, talking to
No,
everybody, and yeah.
no,
So,
no. I played basketball, and it was like basketball was my dream. That was what I wanted to do, and ended up winning a state championship in high school, which is cool. In fact, our team was just inaugurated or inducted in the Hall of Fame of that school.
oh wow!
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it was nice. And so did that, and I was planning on playing in college, and got cut my sophomore year. It was like one of those like
Wow.
big letdowns, and didn't know what to do because I hated school, and all I knew was working out in basketball.
Yeah.
So I remember asking a CEO when I was 18. I said, They were like, well, what happened to basketball? I'm like, you know what? I go, it's done. I go, but I have more motivation and discipline than I know what to do with. So
Yeah.
what's the one thing I got to do to be in your shoes when I get older? And he looks at me, he smiles, and he goes, you learn how to sell. If you learn how to sell, you'll always be employed. And that was one of those things that, I was very coachable.
Yeah.
And to me, not having a father, you look at somebody like that, and I guess there's an instinct to say, you just do what they say. That's
Yeah.
how I was, at least. And I remember getting this thing in the mail saying I'd been selected because of my GPA to join this fast-paced sales and marketing company in the health and wellness industry. I'm like, well, I like to work out, and I'm supposed to be in sales, so here we go. And it was to sell cookware door to door.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And so here I go, and there's 80 kids in the room. Now, to get into college, I had to be part of the probation program, which is all the other minorities. We all worked as janitors, basically,
Yeah.
cleaning cigarette butts, cleaning toilets, and basic stuff. But I got paid for it, and I had more money than I'd ever seen before. I was like $938 for that summer. It was
You're
bad.
balling.
I was balling, and I kept it all in ones too. So I was like, I'd be sitting on the couch watching TV, and there's this drawer here, and I'd open it up and just be like, and just put it back, and it was just all in a roll. And when they came out, the franchise owner of the thing came out, and they said his first summer he made $9,000. And I was like, I said another zero.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was weird. I still remember this day. It's like all the periphery went away, and all I saw was him. And it's like, those moments where you're really focused.
Yep.
My attention narrowed in on him, and I walked up to him and I said, I'll do what you say when you say to do it, no questions asked. And he's just like, okay, next. And that was my interview. I mean, you and I both know, like, imagine somebody comes up to you and says that, you
Yeah.
hire that person, like, on
Yeah.
the
It's
spot,
done.
right? But that's all I knew. I knew how to be coachable, and I knew how to work hard. I didn't
Yeah.
have talent. I didn't have skill. I couldn't speak in front of groups. I had massive anxiety. Like, it was all I knew was work.
Yeah.
And probably in some way, shape, or form to please some male figure, right? Now you look back on it, you're like, yeah, those are my daddy issues, right?
Yeah.
And they served me well in those senses, and, the demons in the other senses. But I remember doing that, and I was the last guy to make a sale because my mom was out of town, and she came back and bought a sympathy set because you have to buy your kids
Yeah. You have
first
to.
sale, right? And so that was 2 weeks, and what they told me at the time was there's a numbers game to this, right? Like basketball, free throw percentage, batting average. This is for 10 presentations, you make 3 sales. And I was like, so I run through his perspective and I read all that stuff, and 3 people out of 10 will say yes. They said, yeah, and I get paid that. They go, yeah. I go, well, shit, how fast can I get to 10? That was
Yeah.
the first thing that went through my mind, right? Like, and then how can I do it again and do it again? It was like this race to 10. And then they told me this really cool concept that every no gets me closer to my next yes because of this thing called the law of averages. I was like, so if it's a law, meaning if I just do 10, I get 3, and if I get 7 in a row, I'm going to get 3 in a row after
Yeah.
that. So it doesn't matter if I get a yes or a no, it's just going to average out, right? And I'm like, man, and of course I was in school, in psychology and behavioral neuroscience, which is all statistics. So I understood the stats. I just got to follow the numbers. And rejection, I've been rejected my whole life. Like, who gives a shit,
Yeah.
right? And so all of the past demons and shit that I'd been through served me so well in that moment of understanding rejection, being extremely coachable, and understanding hard work. And if I could just run and plug into that system, it would work. And I ended up becoming number 5, United States, Canada, and Mexico at 18.
Wow.
And what was crazy is here I get cut from the basketball team, and we're in New York City. I'm in New York for the first time, and we're at the Marriott Marquis. It's for the $1 million party, right, for all the top
Yeah.
award winners. And first thing they do is put us in a limo. And of course, I'd never been in New York. First thing you do, you go out the sunroof and you're just looking out.
Yeah.
You're looking around. And I remember, still the same thing. It's like these are defining moments. I remember going, man, basketball, somebody could decide if I played or not.
Yep.
But in sales, if I make a sale, no one's cutting me.
It's such a trip because, I played soccer for a living, right? And I got in a car accident that ended my soccer career. I stopped playing and my life was figured out.
Yeah.
My life was figured out. I was like, I'm going to play professional soccer when I'm 40. I become a coach. I'm good.
Yeah.
That's my life.
That was the life.
Then all of a sudden, I don't have soccer anymore. And that is something that I talk to athletes about all the time to this day is like when you're an athlete, your day to day is and it's an opinions game. It's an opinions game.
Yeah.
It's someone's opinion is choosing who you're gonna if you're gonna play or if you're not going to play,
Hmm.
and if you're gonna be quote unquote successful or not successful, right? It's not a like in sales in business. I think it's a process thing, right? Like you're consistently hitting XYZ process. It's a numbers game.
Yeah.
You'll eventually hit it, but you can go all the way to the moon if you want to.
Yeah.
There's no ceiling, which is such an like I remember that realization for me as well, which is like was like a huge defining moment for me because I'm like, wait a second, I can do whatever I want.
Yeah. Well, you could put yourself in the game here.
Yep.
Like I would literally, I made a curfew I had a curfew in high school, by the way, self-imposed in the summer.
Oh
I'd
wow.
be in home by 10 o'clock
Why?
because I wanted to be up at 7:30 in the gym by 8 because I knew my coach would be walking by at 8 o'clock walking his dog. Like I'd heard that story like when I was a sophomore that some of the players would do that. And I'm like, well, that's my plan too then. And I
Yeah.
would be in bed. I didn't drink. I didn't do anything. And so when I was in college, I didn't need that discipline for that. But I was like, no, I did the same thing in the summer, coming out of my freshman year.
Yeah.
I took a TV out of my dorm room. I stayed in the dorms, my freshman year, even the summer. I didn't go
Yeah.
back home, but I couldn't because my parents just got a divorce. And so I stayed there and I took the TV out because I said, if I don't watch TV, how many more books could I listen to? I was like, well, that was my thinking.
Yeah.
And by the way, this robotic sense at that early age made me really robotic, and I had to undo the robotic nature, which is a little bit later down. But I was that focused and unfazed.
Where do you think that like that discipline came from? If it wasn't because was it from sport? Was it a coach? Was it like because what it sounds like you did really well like up to that point is like even just you learned to like hey, this person has experience.
Yeah,
Like I'm going to listen and I'm going to do what they do. You did it with the older players at your school, right? That said, "Oh, they're 7:30, you heard about the story, you're going to go, okay, if that works, I'm going to do it." Like where was that trigger?
it's easy to say, well, I was just always disciplined. No, I think it was probably either a fear of failure in terms of just looking stupid, um, but also wanting guidance. Like I
Yeah.
had this thirst for somebody to approve,
Yeah.
and the and also a thirst to win at something because I'd lost so much in basketball, even losing every year. Like there's a whole, I mean, my coaches, there was no good coach that I had. I had one good coach actually, going my junior to senior year summer league, not my other
Oh wow.
coaches. And I played in the Pro-Am basketball league. And the Pro-Am was like you could take 11, 12 players from each conference. And I was a starter on that team, third leading scorer, and played, you know, played well. And but I couldn't get playing time in my own high school. And so it was like, I had experienced loss so much and I just wanted to win at something.
Yeah.
And when I got that taste in sales, it was like, okay, maybe it's a chip on my shoulder. I think it's a combination of all that, wanting
Yeah.
approval, having a chip on the shoulder, wanting to win. And there was, my mother used to always say, be careful. I always get scared when you get committed to something because there's just this blinders that go on. And that's kind of how I was. And all I did was, I had five things back then. It was five money making activities: it was prospecting, setting appointments, presentation, closing, and aftercare. Right. And later on, I learned about referrals. Right. But it was
Yeah.
like those six money making activities were just on repeat because it's the only way you make money.
Yeah,
In sales too.
100%. So you were in that sales job for that, and then did you go into other sales? How did
I
you,
stayed out through college and graduated, and then went to work for my mother. And I had because I was in sales,
yeah,
not because of my GPA. My GPA was 2.3, but because I had a massive track record in selling high ticket, and I was really good. I was a great interviewer. By that time, I'd figured out, because I knew what selling was,
yeah,
like better than most people at that age, better than most people even at any age, to be honest, because of just how much went into it. So I interviewed well, had 27 job offers, and I took my mom's, which was the lowest paying, to help her grow her consulting business. Now her business was doing really well. It was in change management that you brain research to deal with massive scale culture change in
oh wow,
manufacturing sites, and so we're dealing with unions and things like that. But the reason that people say, well, why didn't I do it? I could have gone to Eli Lilly. Xerox wanted, 3M, and I had all these job offers. But I was in my senior year. I think it was Christ, Faith, the Management of Wealth, or Business Ethics, one of those two classes. And my teacher was incredible, Dr. Michael Naughton, and he would bring in these speakers just out of the blue. And there'd be 13 of us in the class. And he brings this guy in. He was the director of training for Swiss banks.
Oh wow.
I was like, okay, Prabhu Guptarov, I think was his name, Prabhu, something like that.
Yeah.
And he just came in. He goes, "What do you guys want to talk about?" I'm like, "This guy's not even prepared to nothing." And we asked two questions, and he just unleashes knowledge. And I'm just like, there's 12 of us in this class, 13. I'm like, and I'm just soaking all this in, going, man, I don't know anything. I'm just dumb. And then this other guy he brings in like 2 weeks later, Jeff Gates, who wrote a book called The Ownership Solution. He was the guy that wrote the legislation for ESOP programs.
Wow.
And he was an advisor to Gorbachev and Reagan and like all these people. And he's in there. There's 13 of us in the class. And I'm like, I don't know nothing. Which then I realized that's when I was ready to graduate. When you go in thinking you know everything, you leave going, I don't know shit. And all I could think about was, am I going to grow based on how many Post-it notes I sell or Xerox copy machines time I sell? Or by having conversations like this?
Yeah.
I want these conversations. For some reason, I wanted training and mentorship over anything.
Yeah.
Probably dad shit, right? And so I chose to work there because I knew I could have conversations like the guy that told me, because it was the guy that told me that was one of my mom's clients, that, learn how to sell, you always be employed.
Yeah.
If I could be around those people, there's no stopping me. And so early on, I had good guidance, I guess, or maybe I just listened. I was thirsty.
Yeah. Well, and that's like the thing is I work like even in my company, I have a lot of young agents, things like that, and I'm like, look, like it's about like understanding you will never know everything, but always chasing to know everything, right?
Yeah.
Like this concept that like, but a lot of the times when we're younger, we think we know everything.
Yeah.
And I love that shift in your thought process of like, wait, I don't know anything.
There's a quote from Voltaire that says that follow those who seek the truth, run from those who claim they found it.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
That's what you just said, which is always seek it, but never get comfortable in it because there's always something else.
Yeah. You can never know everything.
No.
But can we consistently be learning so that we can level up our game and the people around us?
Absolutely.
I freaking love that. And that's what you do now. Like that's what you do now. Like you're quite literally leveling up people's lives through which like your studies in neuroscience, right? Like
behavioral neuroscience.
Behavioral neuroscience, like to like what you do and how you operate and how you're changing people's lives. Like how did you get into that? So you're like working at your mom's company, but then like how did that transition happen?
Well, I went to school for it.
Yeah.
So that was good. So that developed a passion for me.
Yeah.
So when I was 17, my mom asked me, she goes, look in this room, what does everyone have in common? Couldn't figure it out. And she's like, everyone has a brain. If you know how the brain works, everything becomes easier. And so, either you work with the brain or you fight against it. It's structured the way it's structured.
Yeah.
Learn the rules. And so I kind of had that approach of saying, okay, well, I want to understand how we process information. What makes us laugh? What makes us cry? What makes us listen, not listen? What makes us pay attention? How do we perceive the world? Why does he do it this way? She does it that way. It was just full of questions. Why do we resist change even though we know we need to do it? Why is it when they tell a joke, they laugh, but when I tell, they don't? There was always this why, and it was insatiable.
Yeah.
And when I realized that there's usually research to back up every question that we have to ask. So then I just learned to find it. I was like, why is it that we do this? Why is it a kid pees the bed, stops peeing at 2, but the other ones go till 9? What's the reason? Okay, so what's the reason? How do you, it was, till this day, like why? Why are eyes the windows of the soul? Why do eyes are the tools of trust? Why are hands the tools of attention? What's the research behind it? And then you learn like, oh, okay, well, there's something there. And then you start saying, well, you take that knowledge and you apply it and you watch something that never changed before and you apply this new knowledge and the change happens and the resistance goes away and the results follow. You realize that it's a chess game. They're
Yeah.
literally a chess game. And if you can understand that level of neuro strategy, I've never said that before, but that sounds cool, right?
Good little buzzword.
Right. What there's a neuro strategy to that, right?
Yeah.
There's what is the neuroscience approach to this? Don't let me forget that. That's a really good one. I got to say that. But there's some sort of science that supports the best approach to it, and when you become relentless in that approach and you become a continual student,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm a speaker, but I feel like I'm sharing,
Yep.
up on that stage. And as somebody who shares, I'm a servant to those people in the audience because they have a choice of being there or not, paying attention or not, liking me or not liking me.
Yeah.
And I can think I'm great, but they can put a rating on there that say you suck. And so I don't own my credibility. My audience does. And when you
Yeah.
realize that, you're there to continually serve that audience.
I love that. Now, as you're learning all this and as you're processing all this and as an individual in general, right? Like a lot of people get into this like I guess what you had said earlier, like this robotic, like, hey, I'm learning all this, but then like how do you tell people not to get into overwhelm as they're learning this stuff? Because you can easily sit there and be like, oh, I got a mirror, I got to do this, I got to do
Yeah.
this, I got to, you know what I mean? Like, and it could be this whole thing. So like, how do you tell people to
Yeah.
like not get into that overwhelm?
Well, just like anything, go back to when you were learning soccer. You had to learn fundamentals. You had to learn, and you were constantly seeking many little advantages, any
Yeah.
micro advantage. And you probably, to be at your level that you played, you had to be incessant about that approach. And that is in the training time. But when it came game time, you're not training during a game time. You were letting go all of it and letting muscle memory,
Yep.
instinct, and intuition and all of the sort of the unconscious behaviors take over during that time. If you're trying to be too strategic, you lose sight of the relationship. And so, like for me, when I say I became robotic, it was a perfectionist
Yeah.
approach, right? And there was no connection, and perfection was just driven by fear and insecurity. And so
Yep.
I was massively scared, massively insecure, but I was really good at what I did. But it was also robotic in the sense of people were like, "Man, he's perfect in his delivery, not in life, but in
Yeah.
delivery." And I started realizing that you don't connect through perfectionism. In fact, of all the human qualities, perfection is the least human.
Yep.
So if somebody is like flawless, they go, dude, the guy's like a robot. He doesn't miss.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, so a robot doesn't miss, but a human misses. And so to err is to be human, so there's like,
Yep.
I'm like, wow, I'm becoming unhuman. And what am I hiding? So there's that whole piece.
It's so interesting because it's like I've been having this conversation with a lot of different people actually recently, especially, but like I'm a big believer in like everybody's an artist and like this true thought process of like being an individual is what people actually connect with versus like that perfect person, which everybody's always trying to hit like what do people want to see? How do they see it? Like blah blah blah. But like when you see that person, you're usually not emotionally connected. But
No,
when that person is, you know, just who they are, it's usually like maybe they're not the coolest person,
yeah.
but you're like, man, I love that person's vibe. I like that who they are. Like we should connect, right? Like
Well, you can admire perfection, you can't connect with it. And
yes,
that's the thing. It's like you see this beautiful train coming and it's chrome and it's perfect. You can sit and admire it, but you can't get in. It's just like you put your hands on it. You know that sound of squeaking chrome,
yeah,
and then but like you just have to sit back and admire it because you can't get on that. Right? There's no way of being part of it, and until you realize there's a hole in it, right?
yeah,
Then you can grab onto something. And I think life's that same way. We don't connect to perfection. We don't connect to people that come off of that persona of perfection.
yeah,
We connect to people's flaws and their struggles and their failures because that's the one thing. The other thing we have in common is we all fail. We
yep,
fail often.
100%,
And so somebody who looks like they don't fail, it's like, wow, they must be really cool, but can't connect.
100%. What was that journey like for you mentally? Like getting over that perfectionism?
I don't think I'm over it at all. Yeah, my wife helps me with that. One, she reminds me how imperfect I am. Love you, babe. Um, but she's also, and what I mean by that, I was joking about the previous, but she just acts. She doesn't need it to be, she needs a, people say, get it 80% right. She's at 60. Get it
Yeah,
out the door
yeah,
and we'll figure it out along the way. And, but the I'm much better than I used to be. You know, there's the hyper pro is the one that always has to have everything in order, and you know the camera tilted up just a little
Yeah.
bit, right? And you know, so it still lives within me. You know, I won't release a reel unless the everything's perfect and the messaging is right and the captions are there and it captures the right message because you know there's all that stuff and it's just a constant. Just let it out, Rene. Just go, hit play, hit send, and let it go. Now there's another side to that too, which has served me well. It made me really good at what I do.
Yeah.
Right? So I do read the books. I do go through the process. I do practice. I do put in the time. I do all those things. And so there's the there's the gift and the curse and everything that we're going after. And so being able to try to manage those two is the real struggle. And I'm not saying that from a sob perspective.
Yeah.
It's just that's the reality I think we face.
The I think the thing like was the realization, right, that you're dealing with it versus like the realization that you're dealing with it versus like not even knowing that you're dealing with it.
Yeah.
Because then you can actively combat that, right?
Well, if you don't know it, I mean, how can you solve a problem you can't see, right? It's like hitting a target you can't see.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's the hard part was the realization that used to be like, oh, I'm a perfectionist, and I kind of like a badge of honor. And then you realize that no, perfectionism is fear and insecurity, and it's an excuse. That's a little bit harder to swallow.
Yeah.
But then when you let your ego go, and you realize, yeah, that's what it is, it becomes easier. You know, like another example, remember 8 years ago, I showed up here actually in LA to do a conference, NAREP conference,
Yeah.
National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals. And NAREP, these business rallies, there was 500-600 people there, you know, Latinos, they dressed
Yeah.
in their best. And I arrived and my bag didn't. And I'm in sweats and a workout t-shirt, not shaved. And I, at the time, I still really don't, but better now, but I didn't fit anything off the rack.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh boy, I landed at 9:30. I'm on at noon. I called my boy Hector. I'm like, dude, can I use your car? I got to go see if I can go find something. It's 9:30 in the morning. There's two things that are open, Walmart and Kohl's.
Yep, exactly.
And nothing. I mean, the suits were coming up to here. They weren't fitting. I was like, what's going on? My pants. I was like, no, they're too long. Like, I'm like, let me try it with just some of my workout gear. I'm the main keynote. And I'm like, yeah, oh man, this would make a great story, right? I walk up and I see everybody in their suits. I start dripping in sweat. I walk and I just turn left and I go into a corner and I'm just like sitting there. And I'm like, I don't want to go out there. I'm like, and then I start this life reflection. I'm like, am I just a suit? Is that all I am? Like this facade? Like it was like emotional too. I was just like,
Yeah.
man, like, oh man, well, shit, I guess you're gonna find out. Because I can't back out
Yep.
and I can't tell anybody. I'm scared.
Yeah.
Here we go. So I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna turn it into a story, which of course I did. It turned out fine, standing ovation, the whole thing. Within 2 minutes, people forgot I wasn't wearing it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then what's funny though is it happened again last month. I showed up to this event, boutique event, by 200 people. This beautiful place in Portland, but by the water. It was just
Yeah.
like the lake. It was this beautiful place. My bag doesn't show up, and I'm like, let's get to we go to Nordstrom Rack. I'm like, I got to try to figure something out. I'm looking around. I'm like, I'm not gonna try to buy pants. I'm like, maybe I'll just find. You know what? I put on a hoodie. I said, let's go.
It's my style now.
Yeah, let's go. And we had a great time. No one cared.
No, no one
No
does.
one cared. I mean, we laughed about it. We joked about it. I even just use it. I use it as a moment to share my journey with that.
Just got to get you a carry-on bag that has some space for one outfit.
Yeah, you know the size of my coats, man. Like
I know
you
that's
saw my bag, right?
it's
Yeah.
my issue too, though. It's like
I can tell. I know.
like I was talking to actually one of the players that I coach at SC, and she's playing pro now in Utah, and she goes, I was talking to her, she was like, yeah, she like came out here. She was like, yeah, I packed, blah, blah. I had like, she has all these outfit changes. I was like, like the same bag that you pack, I could fit one pair of shoes
Yeah.
and one outfit. Like
Maybe.
it's exactly
That didn't need to be pressed.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's like not fair, There's
Yeah.
it's heightest,
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, I mean that's like actually that's like my favorite thing that happened with COVID-19 is everybody like it was like this like feeling that like this pressure that we had to wear like suits and being this and that, and now it's like kind of like
Just went away.
it went away. I feel like as much as or I just let it go.
Yeah, there's some truth to that. That's for
You know
sure.
what I mean?
Yeah,
Like because I was the same way. I was like I had to make sure that I was, but now it's like just have a good time, wear
I mean,
something
you still
crazy.
did pretty good.
Yeah, but it's fun,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's like not like
It's more you.
that's exactly what
It's
it
not
is.
a costume anymore. Yeah.
Exactly. Um, so talk to me about what you're doing now. Talk to me about AMP, about like how you're positively impacting people. What are you doing? Like, why are you here in Newport Beach?
So we I wrote a book called
Yep.
Amplify Your Influence, excuse me, and that book was written about a course that I'm here to do, and it's a 2-day highly intensive boot camp, 10 people at a time, where we walk them through the 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 tear down and the rebuilding of their story, and it's tearing down of the old view of how they see speaking and how they see influence, adding in the science and the practice and even the philosophy and what some would even say, dare I say, spirituality side to influence. And people say, why is it spiritual? I said, well, okay, so pretend you don't have influence. You walk in a room, no one notices. You tell a joke, no one laughs. You share an idea, no one cares. You sell a product, no one buys. You cast a vision, no one follows. It's probably one of the worst feelings of feeling insignificant and invisible. If you were in a meeting and you felt that way, you'd ask yourself, why am I in this meeting? If you're in a relationship, you felt insignificant, you say, why am I in this relationship? If you were at work, you'd be like, why do I work here?
Yeah.
Some people feel that way about life. And so the lack of influence, I think, is the worst of human experiences. Not one of, if not the worst. And so because we feel like we have no purpose, and then we also have no impact, so we don't matter. And if I don't matter, why am I here? Bring it back. You walk in a room, people notice. You tell a joke, people laugh. You share an idea, people love it. You sell a product, people buy. Cast a vision, people follow. Now you feel significant, impactful, visible, meaningful. And when you look at that piece, if you felt significant in a relationship, you'd know why you're there. If you felt significant at work, you'd know why you're there.
Yep.
In a meeting, you'd know why you're there. If you felt significant in life, you'd walk differently. And so when you think about influence, to me, is the easiest path to purpose. It's that mark that you make on the world. And so we have to rebuild that whole view of not influencer, but creating influence. And that is a science. It can be learned. And so we walk people through a process to teach them that and to build it. And so they obviously, then we add in the business value proposition, but people have a pretty profound experience going back to their life and what happens. And whether it's I work with people that are professional athletes that
Yeah.
that you and I you would know, to influencers that you would know, politicians that you would know, to salespeople, to CEOs, to housewives that are trying to find purpose, to college students, even some high school students. Their parents want them to go through it. And so it's a really fun experience, very powerful. And from that, sort of my years of being in sales, in leadership development and change management, putting all this together to me is really what influence is. And
Yeah.
so I take that approach to it. And so we have that course that we do once to twice a month. We have a mastermind that we do 3 times a year for sort of more of the sort of elite members. It's a very high-end group, really fun, great conversations, and structured masterminding. And
Yeah.
we bring in some pretty high-level speakers that will speak for only about a half an hour, and then we'll Q&A for 15 minutes, and then we'll implement for 15. So each speaker that we do, we'll bring 4 throughout the a day and a half. We'll have about an hour of time,
Yeah.
and the rest of it is the people masterminding and sharing ideas. And so we also just recently, because when you speak 239 days, you realize that, and transparently, I maximized a model that wasn't right.
Yeah.
Maximize a model that was dependent on me, that could not earn an income unless I was working and traveling. And I have a family.
Yeah.
And, I don't want to do that. So recently partnered up with a dear friend to create a new company called Lighthouse Equity Partners. So we're actually taking small stakes into growing businesses that are stuck and don't know how to scale. I bring my skills of my 30 years of doing this. Derek brings his skills of growing and scaling. Matt, who's his partner, brings in his operational skills. My wife is relentless and just runs and execution. So the four of us look at these businesses and doing what we did before, but just in a different way.
I love that.
It's way exciting.
That's fun. It's like a new sandbox.
Yeah,
It's a sandbox that you get to play with and be able to like and then like be able to positively impact those businesses and those people's lives.
yeah, at a
It's
deeper level.
it's just so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And
And by the way,
so
it's the first time I've shared that with anyone. So you heard it here first.
perfect. We like that. No, I appreciate you sharing that. Like the the impact that you've had on. I mean, even like I know Juan, like my good friend, your good friend, like he tells me how you've changed his life, right? And you see what he's doing now is so amazing, and what he's impacting, and even the videos that we had shared when we were. I was right out here actually
Yeah,
on the Duffy when we
nice.
when we were talking. Literally, I think like probably right here when I was watching the video. Um, and that it's very obvious that you're impacting these people on a positive level, on a thing that's going to change their lives.
Mm.
Um, and you had shared earlier about influence, about how that you feel that is um, the best thing for people to experience. Um, did you ever go through a time where you felt like you didn't have that?
Oh yeah, most of my most of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as a kid, that's for sure. I was the fat kid. I was the one that girls didn't like, um, and as hard as it was, I thank God for it because it created contrast and compassion and empathy for people that are struggling
Yeah.
and not having a voice. I resorted to fighting because if I was made fun of, I didn't know how to verbally defend myself. And so the only thing you had was to get physical, and not proud of it, but it was, you know, I had to learn. And this is what people say, well, I'm not good at it. It's like, I go, those skills are made, they're not born. So there's attributes that we're given. Some people are a little bit more charismatic, maybe a little more testosterone in their system, and maybe have better serotonin function. But, there's, and we're products of our environment. And, obviously there's a nature to who we are, but the nurturing side, the how we're born, who we're surrounded with is way more powerful.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. I have two more questions for you. One question is, if people want to connect with you, where do they find you?
Instagram or TikTok, it's Learn with Rene, Learn with Rene, Rene. My website's Meet Rene, Meet, not Meat. That would be another side gig. I said that joke one time, and somebody actually bought it for me and said, he goes, hey, we figured we just locked it down for you. So, yeah. But no, meetrene.com, and probably the two of the easiest ones.
Killer. And then my next question is someone struggling with that self-doubt and that lack of feeling influence in their relationship, in their life, or whatever, like what's one piece of advice you would give them other than attending one of your courses?
Almost everything in life can be answered by identifying the difference between what you can and cannot control. And if you can't figure that out, get around people that will help you figure out what you can control and what you can't. You can't control how people think and what they feel about you. You can control what you do. And that comes down to the basics of basics. You can't control the market or interest rates, but you can control how many phone calls you make. You can control how many times you pick up the phone. You can control how good your delivery is. And if you're not good, then get good and figure out how to. You can control what information goes in your ears. If you're scrolling and watching all the negative shit, well, you're creating that. You can uncreate that and start surrounding yourself, listening to the books, surrounding with people like you, doing the things that you can, whatever it is. And no matter where in the journey you are, I used to find the number one people or people that were good at something. I said, can I just buy you lunch? Can I drive you to the airport? I got kids right now that are like, can I just get your next drive to the airport? I will drive you.
Yeah.
Like, why do you want to do that? He goes, I just want that half-hour conversation. I'm like, man, I respect that. Like, that's cool. I'm honored and flattered.
Yeah.
But I'm like, why don't you, at that point, I'm like, why don't you just, if you're that willing, just come to the house, come, it'll give you some time. But, you've got to have that hunger to figure out what you can and cannot control. It's if you don't know the Serenity Prayer, there's so much wisdom in that beyond Alcoholics Anonymous. I think it's life.
Yeah.
And if you can really focus on that and understand it, it's such a game changer because the expectations we set, all the disappointment we have in life is all correlated to the expectations that we set. And when we manage the expectations and the things we can and can't control, you start realizing this, the outcome is much different.
I love that. I appreciate you so much for being
Oh,
here.
that's
Thank
my
you.
honor, man.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for being on.